Thank you for coming to Comfort Behavior and watching this program that we've put together with these incredible filmmakers. And we're so pleased that so many of them are here with us today to speak a bit more about their work.
Yeah, we're very excited and to hear a little bit more insight to the film.
Should start by introducing who's here.
Yeah, maybe we can do it in order of like how the films appear in the program. So, in the very first film is by Anouk and Tom, who's not here, but they made it.
Program notes are here. We also are joined by Anouk Laura, who is joining us from Mexico today, and she made the film Winter in the Rainforest.
We have Josh Cloud, who made the poster and also Have You Been to a Place animated film.
And then last we have Elena, who made Valde Dios, which is a beautiful animated short. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Maybe you can preface these talks by saying if people have questions, they are welcome to put them in the chat, either in Zoom or Eventive, and we'll see both because we have the technology.
But yeah, so I think we were thinking that we would just love to hear from all the filmmakers present, just a little bit about how the film came to be and whatever insight or thought process that you're willing to share. Yeah. Maybe we can start with Anouk.
Hi, and thanks again for inviting the film and organizing this Q&A. So to give a little bit of an introduction about it, so it's a collaboration with Tom Callemin, who is a Belgian photographer and filmmaker, and it started with a curiosity really about what it would mean to work together. Because between the two. And so as a starting point, because you have to start somewhere, we took this idea of exploring the experience of an eclipse, something that is, I mean, in our time at least, experienced mostly in a visual way. I mean, when there is an eclipse, there's millions of cameras that are pointed at the sun. But I came across in the research, I came across a description by Virginia Woolf of an eclipse that happened in 1927, which is of course not our time, like 100 years ago. And I was really amazed by how she described the experience of the eclipse, because for her, an eclipse is much more than the actual event. She writes, I wrote it down, she wrote, "We had seen the world dead," which is something that evokes something much more than a cosmic event. So it becomes a really poetical experience, and so that for us became really the starting point for making a film. Yeah, it was for us to describe an experience of an eclipse, but not in a visual way. Because when I experienced an eclipse, I was actually much more blown away by what I heard than what I saw. How the animals in the forest switched into a night mode all of a sudden, like a reverse dawn chorus in a sense. So I was really fascinated by that, and so like together we did our research, and all these puzzle elements that we found ultimately became this film. I mean, I can say a lot more, but maybe maybe later.
Great.
Yeah,
really cool.
I'm so curious to ask more questions about that, but maybe we can give everyone a chance to hear about their film.
And keep existing in this liminal space.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm here.
Great. Maybe Anouk, Laura, you could tell us about your film and its genesis.
Okay. I'm Anu Laura. I come from Estonia, even though now I am in Mexico. My film was also shot in Mexico. And it was a very long process. It's a stop motion film, and it's made with porcelain puppets, stop motion puppets, but they're made of porcelain. And I had this, sorry, very noisy here. I had dream of working with porcelain. This is Mexico. You can never guarantee a silent moment. Okay. So I was working with porcelain for this project for the first time, and it took me really like let's say like half a year to figure out the technique, how to make them, and then like about 2 years to make the puppets, and then
They want to help. They've got stuff to say too.
wonderful recording you will have. Yeah, my host has 2 dogs, and they're very energetic dogs.
Adam in the chat says those canines loved the film.
Well, and the film was, the idea was born in Mexico. I came here first time 2015, and I went to this little village, Xilitla, and there's this beautiful surreal garden made by a British artist, Edward James. I'm sorry, maybe you want to start with somebody else right now?
Yeah, whoop. Yeah, we can maybe come back to you. I mean, we've got more pointed questions about construction and the process of filmmaking based on a little bit that we know already, but
yeah, we can circle back.
yeah, we'll let the dogs talk it out, and then we'll come back to ask you about the other creatures. Maybe we can move on to, I mean, Josh, do you have any dogs? Okay, Josh has no dogs, and maybe he can tell us a bit about his film, please.
First off, yeah, thanks so much for including me in this lineup. It's really an honor. I don't even know, Hive Tap. Well, it's like an acronym for have you been to a place. I like shortened it. I like to play with like language and forming like new words for things. So like the acronym for the like leading line of the poem turns into like its own word, which is hard to pronounce. And but I kind of just like roll with it. But essentially I was just kind of like, I don't know, it was a lot of just figuring out the world and figuring out kind of like a relationship with materiality. Before the film, coping mechanisms and like learning to like kind of like resituate myself in the world, my relationship with just like the material world through kind of these material practices. I don't know, because it's easy to feel like the world is kind of like out to get you when you only have these kind of like non-emotional things that are reflecting back on you. But I think like leaning into like craft and material kind of like showed me that there is a lot of like love and compassion in the world. You just have to kind of maybe look a little harder for it, especially in the present day. And yeah, it was just kind of like it wasn't planned at all. And it was definitely very spontaneous for films as far as I go. Now my films and my projects are a lot more like research based and take a lot more time to kind of come to fruition, but I kind of didn't know what I was gonna make. And showed up to a shooting stage at CalArts with like a box full of like ceramics and fiber and like weird things, and just started kind of like seeing them. I was trying to kind of like show the feelings that, or the world that I felt that I was in when I got into this like really sweet spot of like working with my hands, and kind of like this imaginary liminal world, or like now I've kind of reframed it in my mind as like a speculative ecology of a time when like fiber and materials have their own like sentience, in a time when maybe like people aren't around, where like plants are more like actively expressive, and like hills are walking along and rolling, and like there's a kind of a different sense of, I don't know, just like experience. It does come across like a little, someone described it to me as like a horror, which was like really interesting, and I don't know why that sticks with me, but yeah, I think like it was a lot of me, like the process kind of like, I was writing the poem that goes along with it at the same time that I was like filming the scenes that would kind of like then like transfer. So it wasn't like I wrote the poem and then like the visuals came about. It was kind of like a back and forth. Like I would shoot, and like I would shoot some of the sculptures and see what would happen, and then go home and like write lines that kind of felt along, kind of like went with that, and like back and forth until they kind of like both built themselves up into the work that ended up being the final product. But yeah, I think like I'm trying to find more confidence in like writing, and that being a bigger part of my practice. It was kind of like, I write a lot, but it's mostly just like for me and stays in kind of this folder. But that was kind of like, I didn't have time to think about it, about like releasing writing into the world before it just kind of already happened. So so yeah, I feel like I'm rambling, but we can talk more. Yeah, I guess that's it for me.
We love a ramble.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that wasn't one of them, but thank you so much,
Yeah.
Josh. Speculative ecology is a really delicious phrase.
And of course, we must hear from Elena about your film. We're so curious.
Yeah, my turn. Well, first of all, thank you, Sam and Jordan, for inviting me to this program. I'm very happy to be back in LA, even in this way. Well, my film is called Valde Dios, and Valde Dios is a place in the north of Spain, in Asturias. And in this zone, it's a very beautiful green zone, and there is a monastery built there that was built in the 13th century. And not that I'm religious or related to Christianity in any way. Otherwise, well, I'm educated as a Catholic, but well, but the interest of the place for me was some kind of energy I felt. I was like very attracted to that place. So I went there one day with my Super 8 camera, and I just filmed, I just shot what I saw. And I wasn't thinking of making a film, but watching the footage like several years ago, years after the shooting, I found out that in many of the shots, there was like this kind of, I don't know how to say it, there was this kind of point where the images were lost to the darkness or the light. And I thought about connecting these portals with animation. So I had the film scanned, and I started to trying to connect it and trying to like open these portals to the unknown, Valde Dios. And yeah, and it became like this kind of I was like kind of inspired for the forms of the portals to make the animation, which is mostly painted onto acetate. Well, acetate, I don't know if that's the word. It's more like animation cells, sort of animation cells. And I also used some collage elements and some things I had around, and I improvised also a lot in some of the points. And that's it. That's what the film's about.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
I mean, the word liminal has been said a couple times already, not just by me. But these intersections of light and darkness and this like transitory space in between, I feel like is something we were really looking for with this program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a specific question for you, Elena, with the film. There's a moment towards the end where you switch mediums. I know you spoke about using acetate, but you move to like what looks like crayon or some sort of like
oil pastel.
Oil pastel, maybe. I was hoping if you could tell us a bit more about that and how you came to use it at that section in the film, because it's a bit more finite maybe than the rest. It's really lovely.
Well, I don't know. I just like the texture of things. So I like the texture of painting. I like the texture of crayons, and I'm always trying to making something with that. And I thought that at this point, with this image of the horse, which is that part that you refer to, that I could do like this transformation. And I just it's something I like very much in animation in general. This kind of thing when you see the same image like mutating from one media to other, to the pencil, the oil crayon, the acetate, and so on. And I wanted to try that, but it's not that I was thinking about that like, yes, I want to make this in particular. I just wanted to experiment. It's a very free film in that sense. It's like I'm animating, and then I realize I have things around and I just try to use them. I don't know if that's an answer at all, but
no, it's
Totally,
totally an
yeah.
answer. It's responsive.
Yeah, I remember being curious about the importance of the location, and watching it a few times even made me think like if you could consider this like a documentary, and that made me kind of intrigued. Because you're sort of documenting like the space, and I don't know,
yeah, I think that locations are like the main thing in the things I make, and that's because of my life. I'm half Spanish, half Venezuelan, and I have been switching homes from where I was maybe 2 years old. I have moved like several times across these two countries, and I think that my way of relating to the world is trying to connect to different places, even though they are not my places of belonging. So I guess that's why I was connecting to Val de Dios, who was not very far away from a place that I was living for 2 years. That was a house in the country in Asturias, in this zone that is called Villa Viciosa. And I had no relation to that particular part of Asturias, though I was born in a different part of Asturias. And I guess that I was trying to connect to that place somehow. So it was a documentary. I have the Super 8 roll, and you can see it as a documentary, and there are some things missing in the film, like some nice cows, for instance, that I was very sorry to left out of the film. But then I guess it was a documentary of how I was imagining the world to be, that possibility of, well, I don't know. Then thinking about the film and watching it, I thought about this story by Jorge Luis Borges, which is called El Aleph. And this is kind of this point in the world when you can see the whole universe. And I thought that it was like a beautiful idea, like you can have like this point of darkness or light, and you can go through this and like watch the whole universe, which is concentrated in that point. And I guess that happens to everyone, like universe is concentrated in a particular point, and you can feel like many experiences coming to you even though you are not traveling. It's like the internet in a way.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thinking of these like, I mean, speaking of feeling encapsulated in a place, in a singular environment that sort of feels like that is the entire world. I mean, that's what I feel when I watch Winter in the Rainforest. It's sort of this place that feels like it's been there forever and it's growing and it's changing. And I sort of forget as the film goes on that like anything exists outside of it. How are the dogs where you are? Anu, Laura, are they?
It's quiet now.
Okay. Could you just tell us more about the experience of shooting these puppets in this environment? Because they're just so striking and
shot on film as well.
The reason for this film was I had made 2 films before, but I made them in first one in the studio and the second one in my atelier. And I just wanted to go to the nature. Animation takes so much time. And if you animate like every day, it takes you at least half a year, like daily work, or sometimes more, sometimes 1 year. So I just didn't want to lose, to be cut off from the world and lose all the sunshine. So I decided to make a film outdoors, even though I work in stop motion technique and I really like that technique. So I decided I'm going to just make my stop motion film outdoors. And then I got this crazy idea from visiting a surreal garden in Mexico, which was like, it was made by this British artist, Edward James, and he built huge sculptures inside the rainforest. And it was so striking and beautiful. And it inspired me to try to make something also in the rainforest, because I come from such a different nature, like from the north of Europe. And I was really curious about this climate and this very lush and very different nature from my home. So the first thing I did after making my puppets, I found an art residency in Peru, in Amazon forest. And I went there with my puppets, with my 16mm Bolex camera, with like all my equipment and my film puppets. And I spent the summer there in the forest, and I was just walking around with my with my equipment and my puppets for 2 months in the forest, shooting and making tests for the film, and learning how to be in a completely different environment, and how to deal with the nature, because it's so different. How to deal with all this, you hear this in Peru, in Mexico. This is how it is. You cannot, you cannot be prepared ever. And in the nature, it's worse. Now I'm in a city, like it's just noisy, but that's it. But in the nature, you have all these. Oh, there we go.
All hands on deck. I mean, I feel like that's so much of the beauty of this film, though, is these like really finite controlled puppets, these objects that are made in porcelain and really have no movement to them at all when they're still. And they're so graceful and delightful amidst this constantly changing environment behind it.
Right, it makes really obvious like the relationship of time with animation that I just find so fascinating. Like they move so smoothly in like almost a magical way that I don't know, that alongside seeing like the forestry constantly moving, it's really like something else.
Something I mean, I have this question for most people, but Jordan and I were talking a lot about the sound with everyone's work, and this show, at least part of it, was to be about like missing touch and missing the tactile, not only like interpersonally but just environmentally. And for many of these works, it feels like we're being touched and comforted or prodded by this sound.
Right, and like so incredibly sensorial and like more than just image.
Um, one in particular, we were really had questions about for Anouk and for Tom, who's not here at the moment, but I don't know if you want to.
Oh yeah, I think I thinking about the sensorial experience. Like I remember watching it originally at Red Cat in a cinema and thinking like I don't know how kind of magical an experience that was, and I think it's not maybe always so often that you will experience like a film that feels like it treasures like the sound as equally as the image, or even perhaps like more so, you know. And I think thinking about like your music background, and I guess we're just curious to hear a little bit about your thought process behind the treatment of sound, and even like your film as a whole. This is like a whole other topic, but like yours has also this really interesting relationship with time too, where I think that you have like one cut of the film, and it really makes you sort of like sit with yourself in real time, and I that was like an experience that it's so rare with like watching films.
I just realized, I mean, for you, it's daytime. For me, it's nighttime. So I'm going to switch on a light.
Yeah, we've been seeing the light go down.
Exactly. This eclipse has lasted long enough now. So, yeah, so, well, in general, and then I'll switch to the film again. But in general, I think one of the first experiences that were very powerful to me, and that I kind of trace back to why I became the artist or the filmmaker that I am today, is when I was playing the piano with my grandmother. I was 4 or something, and I was really intrigued by the space of the sound. I mean, somehow, I know it's weird. I mean, I was 4 or 5, whatever, but I asked my grandmother, can we go into the sound? Can we maybe make the sound bigger? I want to be in the space of the sound. I probably used different words than I'm using now, but we started dismantling the piano and to really have the sound as yeah, to be taken in by sound, basically. And I really, that's one of my earliest memories, and I really go back to it quite often, like, that must be why, la 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 la. And so in the case of this film, it really wants to, as I said before in the introduction, it's really, well, the protagonist is a blind man. Not that it's particularly important for people to get that, but it was important for us as a starting point to not fall into the trap, let's say, of telling a story of an eclipse in just a visual way. But what if we take away that sense and just rely on all the other senses, the touch, as you said, the feeling of an eclipse. I mean, in the text, the subtitles, this experience of the eclipse is really described in a non-visual way. He hears an approaching silence. The sun is, he catches the last rays of sun in his hand. It's still warm, but then the sun goes away, then it becomes cold, the air is moist, then the wind dies down. So it's really trying to experience something in a non-visual way, or maybe, and then maybe that was our secret, not so secret, goal or something for us in the first place, is to maybe try and find a new way of seeing. Like that's something that intrigues me anyway, new ways of seeing, or even new ways of image making, by using everything that is not a camera, mostly. So it's really that. And then about time, well, yeah, we kind of stretch out time, or at least, actually it's not true, we don't stretch it, we use the actual time it takes for the earth to revolve around the sun, kind of. I mean, when you see the last shot, it's real time. It's not like it's not animation. So that was also a challenge for me to not do it in animation. That was Tom's, what is it? If he found it very important to do it in real time with an actual camera. And so it might seem slow, this last shot, but it is that time. And yeah, to us, it's old time or primal time or animal time. It's kind of, it's time that you sense in, I mean, I sense in my spine somehow. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, amazing.
Primal time. I feel it in your spine. Absolutely.
Final time.
I also had, I guess, maybe one more quick follow-up question to that. Like, I know that a lot of the scene of yours and some other films in the program deal with a lot of text and writing, and you also have just recently written a book, if I'm not mistaken. I wonder if you could speak just a little bit about like your writing process and the incorporation of that in your filmmaking process.
Yeah, well, most of, before I start making a film, I always read like a maniac. And like what you were saying, Elena, about the Aleph, Borges's Aleph, it's one of my favorite stories, and I go back to it quite often. It's really, yeah, mind-blowing. And actually, when you reread it, it means something differently every time somehow. Yeah, it's I mean, literature is my main inspiration. So that's one. And also, before making a film, I write. I write until I get to a core of something, or at least what I think is the core. So I do it anyway. But in the beginning, when I made films, I actually wanted to not use language and try to be as visual or as to rely on the visual and sound. But yeah, since a couple of years, it just creeps up on me, and it's just another tool to make films. And I've made films that are only text as well, because there's something about reading in a group that I find incredibly beautiful as an experience. Not only seeing film in a cinema is a beautiful and wonderful experience, as we all know, but also reading in a dark room together. It's a very intimate affair, I find, and it's something that I tap into. It seems, yeah.
Beautifully said.
Absolutely. I love just hearing you speak and how much of what you speak relates to the body and to how we just bodily experience these sort of intangible things.
Yeah, but that's what we miss, of course. I mean, we are here together, and it's beautiful to be together and to be in different parts of the world, but still come together, which is an amazing experience. But of course, there's nothing like being in the cinema together in the darkness, and the sensuality of it, and just being one body in a room is beautiful. But we'll get there soon enough again.
We will.
Right,
we will
right.
feel each other's heat and smells and everything.
I missed the coffee.
Yeah.
But like, yeah.
Man, I want to like read in a room full of people. That's something that I don't think I've experienced in quite a long time, even before everything started. Thinking of the way that writing influences work too, I was surprised, Josh, to hear that you say that writing is not a huge part of your practice, because I feel like you write a lot and I feel like you use text a lot in your work. I know you have, I believe, a weaving up right now in a group show that uses text. I was hoping you could speak a bit to your use of text in your film. Not only you know, intangibly, but also what are we looking at exactly? Because it's one of those things where I'm just like, I don't really know what it is I'm looking at. Is it a print? You know, is it scratched? Like, it's really lovely. There's like, four questions wrapped up in there.
And it seems, I don't know, I think you mentioned that you've been working with text more recently and your process is a lot more research based now, but it feels as if, I don't know, based on like what I've seen of your current work, it seems like you've always been writing. So I'm just adding that on.
No, yeah, please add it.
Yeah, totally. It's one of those things, like I journal a lot and my sketchbook is filled a lot with like writings and just kind of like dumping my brain onto paper. And I think it's one of those things that kind of just like crept into my practice kind of unknowingly until it was there present in the work. But yeah, a lot of things involve text. Like, yeah, the rug I have up, that's like, it's like a tufted rug, like a kind of like, I don't know, like a shag rug. That's like a big kind of nursery rhyme that I wrote. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this. But okay, wait, to get to the practical, the text in the film is like screen printed on black fabric. It's like white ink on black fabric. And I screen printed like each line like 10 times and then use that as like replacement animation. So it's like a little more alive than just like a static frame of text. It definitely made my precision with the down shooter get a lot better because I didn't want it to just be like a jumpy like text. It was like, I wanted it to feel like it was just like softly like alive and not just like a static thing. So that was really cool. Yeah. But yeah, I want to like do stuff with that. I still have all the fabric and I've been like meaning to make, I've been getting into like patchwork quilting and sewing and things. So I'm like been meaning to use those materials for like more projects. What were some of the other questions? I'm sorry, my brain is not totally.
No, you're good.
No, I mean, those were the questions.
Okay.
Speaking of textiles too, the poster you made for the show looks like it's a type.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I've been using, I have this like stack of stencils that my great grandma gave me when I was like 4 that I keep like coming back to and using for different things. And they're just kind of like pictorial, like glyphs of like animals and nature and things. And so, yeah, it was fun to like, and they have like a transparency to them. They just like keep coming back in my work. I press, a lot of the times they come into like ceramics. I press them a lot into like ceramics as like forms. But yeah.
I love the grandma energy today. We've got your grandma giving you stencils. We've got Anouk's grandma breaking a piano with her.
Yeah. I wonder if you can speak more to your current interest in like crafts. Like it's funny that you say that you used to be a lot more in like 2D animation. Like that's not like how I know your work at all. Because I think I don't know. I'm in like sort of a similar vein, maybe of like being curious about learning, like wanting to learn some sort of new craft skill just for my own like betterment. And then if it happens to link with the process of animation, that's cool. But if not, like that's also fine. But I think I just want to hear maybe your thought process behind like the different practices that you have currently that you're intersecting with animation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm definitely looking for ways to like bring animation into material forms and like vice versa. Like a film I made that's still just kind of like sitting around is like screen printed loops on like ceramic slabs. And I think like there's something about, I love like image transferring, and I think transferring animation into like tactile materials kind of brings like a real sense of, I don't know, like warmth to the film. And yeah, I don't know, like craft is just something that I kind of like fell into, like realizing that I really liked working with my hands. And like CalArts for me was a crazy journey. I started in like character animation, which is like the most digitally driven kind of like commercial animation program. And then like realizing when I made my first film that it was like nothing like my classmates' films. And it was just like, I was like the only one doing like hand drawn and like cell animation up in the like physical spaces. And most people were like in the computer labs. And I just kind of realized I don't like working on computers that much. Like I'm good with like editing and stuff on them, but the majority of the process I enjoy a lot more when I'm like with a physical thing. And And also like for health reasons, I was getting like migraines all the time. And I was like, obviously my body does not like me just like working in front of a computer. And then like switching, it all kind of just like worked out in this crazy way, like transferring to experimental animation freed up a lot of my schedule. And suddenly I had time to like work in the ceramics cage and like just like take a ceramics class. And then I got like a little lap loom on sale like at a craft store and started like weaving in my free time, and that led to like all the weaving projects I've done since on like and like continuously kind of upping the like technical skill. But I don't know, I just like love learning and process, and I think like craft is literally an endless rabbit hole of both of those things in the same way that animation is. And I'm still really at like the beginning of this journey of learning like how material can kind of like entangle itself in this like living form as film. And I think like using film as an activation for the crafts and materials that I work with is something I'm really interested in, and like putting animation onto these 3D objects so they exist in more than one. They can exist in like the static space where you're seeing them in person, but also in this kind of like interesting pocket dimension where they like are running on their own time. So like definitely thinking about a lot of the work I want to do is like an installation form where you have like film playing next to and in combination with the objects, and like, which is also something I've been thinking, talking about a lot with my friends, like this feeling that like an installation form, people don't necessarily stop and watch a whole film a lot of the time, personal struggles, but also I like the idea that you can kind of like jump between those worlds and like see these things existing in multitudes. So yeah.
For sure, yeah, you're like the piece sort of exists in a different world as a film, as like a moving image versus
Pocket
like,
dimension
versus the installation, and they both give you different pieces of information that are really fascinating.
Totally.
We're speaking our language. Cool. Thanks so much, Josh.
I want to know if anybody watching has any questions that they would like to ask any of the filmmakers. You're welcome.
Or if any of the filmmakers have questions for other filmmakers as well.
I don't have a question, but I watched the films in the program, which was a great experience, by the way. So thank you for that. But I just had this, maybe it's because I watched them just before going into this conversation, but I was just thinking this could all be in the same forest somehow. It's like, I mean, except maybe for the film by Theo, but it's and even that one could be like a creature, a transformative creature in the same forest. It just, I mean, it feels like all part of one world, maybe happening at the same time in different dimensions or something. I don't know, but yeah, I love that idea.
At the end of his film, he does leave the compound to go what looks like it could be a forest.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary world out there that we're all just starting to re-explore. So I think this idea of going to this forest where these things can happen is a little bit more of a comfort too. It's an in-between space.
For sure, yeah. I don't know. I've been feeling a certain sense of like cynicism and nihilism, but also totally believing in like magic and filmmaking, you know. So like those two things kind of being at funny odds with each other is an interesting relationship. We do have a question in the chat from Mark. It was great to hear about Josh's relationship to material. Could the other artists talk about their connection to physical materials and craft? Yeah, maybe we can even hear from Anouk Laura if
let's use the moment. There's no barking.
I am so fascinated by your use of porcelain as like a stop motion puppet. It's just like mind blowing.
Well, material is something that inspires me for work, and I would not make animation in any other way than working with materials. I wouldn't do it on computer. That's for sure. And every time I make a film, it's about some new material or some material that is just very enjoyable for me. So I've made films with wooden puppets, with clay puppets, now porcelain puppets, and also shooting in the nature. It is all about material, you know, like everything that surrounds you. On the film, you can see it, but when you are there shooting it, it is so physical, like not only the visual part of it, but what you sense and feel and hear. And in the rainforest, it's just so intense. The moist and the heat and all these like creatures around you, nice creatures and not so nice creatures. And the noises are really something very new to me. Like in my country, in Estonia, it's very silent. And then when I come to the tropics, I'm always blown away by the noisiness, especially in the nature, like the crickets and birds and monkeys and the water also, because I was working in the water. I was always in the river. I was almost all the time I was inside the water, standing inside the water with my cameras on tripods above the water. So the flow of the water in the river is very noisy. So I had to constantly create new silence for myself, like the background noise would become neutral and I could still maintain sanity.
Underrated.
Yeah, and yes, materials, water, this earth, and the wood. Like I was working with my puppets on the wood, you know, like attaching them on the wood branches, tree branches, and also how porcelain feels in like compared to other materials. Like I actually found that the porcelain is a very good material to use in the nature because it doesn't get dirty. It's always shiny and clean. And at the same time, I was using silicone. Like some of the puppets in the film are made of silicone. I made them look exactly like porcelain, but they are made of silicone, and silicone is the opposite. It is sticky and it takes all the dust and dirt that exists in the world. It just wants to attract it and like be sticking onto it. So silicone is not a good material for nature. I had to wash the puppets constantly in the river to make them look like they're clean and porcelain looking. But yes, material is the inspiration for my work as well. So
yeah, I remember we like read somewhere that you were working with an adhesive that wouldn't stop melting because it was so hot. And I remember seeing on like your website you having to like jump into the river because you were covered in ants from like being in nature.
yeah.
It's really interesting the process. I was wondering if for your next project, what sort of materials are you interested in?
I am still continuing the same project. I'm working with the same puppets and making more of the same set of puppets, and I'm making a trilogy of this same story. And now I'm shooting in Estonia in the snowy beach. So it's taking place in the winter, and it's -degrees and snow on the ground and snow falling. And it's a very different experience, in some ways even more demanding physically. And I also discovered that porcelain in that temperature, like on -degrees, is a very bad choice because when you animate, you always have to keep your fingers without gloves and keep them like that you can touch your puppets, but porcelain gets ice cold in the -degrees. Yes, I started shooting this winter, so I already tried it, and it's quite difficult. But next winter I will try to finish shooting, and let's see. Maybe you will see new adventures of my porcelain puppets soon.
I know they're so international.
Yeah, I hope you don't get covered in ants again. Or, you know, any other creepy crawlies.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, thank you. I'd love to hear, Elena, if you could speak to, we talked a little bit about materiality and your love of using these physical objects and physical mediums, but I know at least online, you post a lot of these like shorter pieces, these sort of like animation sketches that are a mixture of a lot of things, but often very tactile. Can you speak about your relationship to materiality and craft, maybe more broadly throughout your entire practice outside of just this film?
Well, this is something that has been very important my whole life, like craft. I started like making these stuffed animals with felt when I was 8 or 9. And then I learned to bake when I was a teenager. And then I learned to knit and to sew. My grandmother was a seamstress.
Grandma.
Yes, yeah, grandma. And she taught me to knit. And I learned to sew myself, and I was like making dresses for myself from a couple of years, like sewing like crazy. And I like to draw, and well, also my father is a painter, so painting and tactile things has always like very present. And he makes like these big canvases with these kind of lamps of acrylic painting. So his paintings are like almost 3-dimensional somehow. And yeah, and for me, like I work in front of a computer like most of the time, and I guess that for making films I want to connect with that part of myself. Like I don't know how to draw, but I do like to draw for making films, and I like to you know, trying to show, as I said before, the textures of things are like very interesting to me, the colors, and I think that this is something that you cannot create exactly the same as in reality with a computer. And also there's the use of film. I haven't used film in all my projects, but I have been enjoying very much to use Super 8 lately, and actually I made a film which I haven't showed to many people, which is just something that I put together, like chopping a lot of Super 8s I had collected from by myself and by other people and so on. It's like kind of a, you know, when you have leftovers and you cook a new meal with that. So that film is something like that. It's something that I made just because I was enjoying like chopping putting together and painting film and so on. And yeah, I love it. It's like everything to me.
I love it. Those meals are often like super tasty too. The ones that you make from everything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, Anouk, I wonder if you have any comments to add about materiality in your work. I know you're sort of, you also work a lot with collaborations with people, and I guess maybe that can sort of tie in a little bit.
With what, sorry?
Or for a new film, not for...
No, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
I didn't get the last, with what, like the same question as Elena, like what did you work a lot with?
Yeah, sort of materiality, but also I think curious about like your practice of collaborating with different artists too, because I find that I remember thinking that when seeing your Red Cat screener, and just being really intrigued by that.
Yeah, sure. Well, to kind of combine both questions into one, is one of the reasons, or one of the reasons why we wanted to collaborate together, so Tom and me on this particular film, was that we have a lot of shared interests, but we make our work in a very different way. I mean, I work mainly in animation, although in recent years that has changed a bit as well, maybe because of this experience making this particular film with Tom. And I found it a challenge to well, I'll phrase it differently. I was challenged by trying to use a camera for once, because before that I kind of tried to avoid cameras and work within the digital. So, like for instance, for that last shot, I was really convinced that that would work as an animation, but Tom said, I really want to try to do this with a camera, like really trying to capture the sun on a piece of paper and film that movement of the sun through, well, I can't really remember, it's 4 years ago, but we kind of captured the sun in a telescope, turn it around, and then project it kind of on a piece of paper and then film that. And yeah, so that was, it was very new in a sense to me, to be so close to reality in a sense, because I'm up till then I was really more into creating imaginary worlds, but here it was trying to find the magic in reality, which was really interesting to me. And it kind of opened up, I have to say, kind of opened up a new way of making films. The films that I've made afterwards are changed because of that experience working on it.
That was so great to hear.
Love hearing you speak.
I know.
You should hear my grandmother.
I would love to.
I was trying to put in the word again.
Yeah. I have some instruments we can break. How they work.
We have one more question from an audience member. Maybe this can be sort of our like lasting question if there are more.
Do you want me to read this one?
Yeah, sure.
This is from Tam. Thank you, Tam. Hello, smiley face. A general question for anyone/everyone. Is there a way in which you resonate with the title or idea of comfort behavior? At risk of oversimplifying or superimposing, is there anything which the films or filmmakers share in common, if ever so slightly? We've sort of explored this idea a little bit.
Yeah.
But
maybe we can go around if people.
Yeah. Does anybody have any immediate thoughts? We have clearly a lot of thoughts because we, compiled these together, and we feel so lucky.
That you all wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, I relate to that idea very much as a person. It's like I'm very lazy, and I like to, like, as you said, enjoying the sunbath in my belly. So totally, yes.
Me too. I like just sitting in one spot and looking at how like things, because of the sun that moves, like how shadows are moving in a room or whatever. I mean, I'm a big fan of these kind of experiences. So yeah, it's a bit the same.
Well, I guess you need that kind of comfort behavior to being able to watch the world and to think about it and how to shoot it and how to make films. So you cannot, like, make films unless you stop, look and listen, as the song says. Stop, look and listen. So yeah, I guess that the comfort behavior is necessary for being a filmmaker. You have to be a bit lazy and waste time sometimes, so you have ideas and you can create something.
For sure. Yeah, I like, when thinking about the program, I know we both have a lot of emotions.
It's true.
And I think I know there's a certain sense of like tenderness to all the films, and in like very unique ways that cherish.
I just got back from a long trip, and you know, people have asked like, oh, what did you do? Like, what big exciting things? And I'm like, mostly what I did is I would just try to go find a lovely place to sit and like watch the sunset, you know, watch the show. I wanted to get a good seat for the show. And it's really not doing too much, but it felt very like warm and peaceful and good, and not in a place where constantly thinking and worrying about everything. Just appreciating where we were in this one moment. Much like I hope that this program has done, in letting us feel like we're appreciating this one moment we have together.
Yeah, not trying to be showy.
Just vibes, vibes only.
And tenderness.
Vibes and grandmas only.
And interesting. I think yeah, we've kind of covered all the bases of what we wanted to make sure to ask all you talented artists.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much
this might be a good time to end it.
for allowing us to screen your film and for taking time out of your day to come and speak about them.
For being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching, who will watch later after this moment in time.
Thank you for inviting.
Yeah, we're so honored that you all wanted to be here.